Hello, everyone. Just want to remind everybody that this is your last chance. Sunday, August 25th, we're going to be recording a Patreon exclusive only with Dave Wheeland. It's going to be a Q&A with Dave on the John Lennon assassination. So get your questions in now if you're a Patreon member. If you're not, you can sign up for as little as $1. Great deal. I don't know where you could get a deal like that. And the only way you're going to be able to view this episode when it comes out Sunday, August 25th, is going to be on Patreon as a Patreon member. So it's not going to be on a free channel. This is going to be exclusive just to Patreon. So please get your questions in. And this is going to be a great episode with Dave. All right, looking forward to it. And thank you, everybody.
Sometimes even good people can make a mistake. And when it happens, it's one of the most intense and emotional experiences of your life. It could be a DUI, or maybe you were in the wrong place with the wrong people at the wrong time. Or perhaps you just did something stupid at the spur of the moment without even thinking, and now you're in trouble with the law. Well, you need experienced legal help right away so you don't become a victim of the criminal justice system. Even good people can make a mistake, and if you, a friend, or a loved one has been accused of a crime, don't make another mistake by hiring the wrong attorney for the kind of help you need. You need to visit toddjohnslaw.com. That's toddjohnslaw.com, and then call Attorney Todd Johns today. Attorney Todd Johns has decades of experience helping good people like you who have made mistakes or bad decisions and will stand by you every step of the way. toddjohnslaw.com.
All right. Hello. Welcome to That's Enough Out of You. I'm your host, Bill Rader, and joining me is my co-host, Sean Kane. Sean, what's going on? How you doing today?
What's going on? Billy Raids, how you doing, buddy?
Doing pretty good. Can't complain. Lots of stuff going on in the world right now, but as we record this, and who knows once this once this drops, who knows where we'll be, but certainly an interesting, they say may live in interesting times, and we certainly do now. We have a returning guest with us this week. Mark Brennan returns to That's Enough Out of You. Hey, Mark, how's it going? How you doing?
Good. How are you, fellas? Great to be back.
Good. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's up, buddy?
Good to see you.
Back.
All right, Sean, what are we talking to Mark about this week?
Well, you know what, Mark? Let's start off. We're gonna cover a variety of topics here today, but start off with a little bit of the work you're doing in Ireland, buddy, and keep us updated since the last time that you're on with us.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, doing a lot of work in Ireland, UK, Australia, all kinds of places, but with young people, like the mainly like 15 to 25-year-olds, but really like that university level at 18 to 25-year-olds, the change makers out there. So we're doing lots of work with them around, skill development, a lot of things. There's a big push now for work around social emotional learning, which isn't touchy-feely at all. It's one of the most important leadership skills you need. So things like, empathy, compassion, mindfulness. You're going to lead people, you got to understand them, and it's critical there. So we're doing a lot of stuff there. A lot of other good things that come out of it too, but in terms of leadership and other stuff, it's really important. So doing that. What else? Doing some work in Eastern Europe right now, partly in response to the Ukraine war and other stuff, but doing some work in Poland around kind of building civil societies and stuff like that. They're just in a rough spot with all the stuff that's been happening in Ukraine and that part of the world.
Sure, right.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about Poland, Mark.
Yeah.
What's going on over there?
Well, the last maybe 2 years, 3 years, we've been working and with them, and I've got a real good friend and fellow UNESCO chair in University of Galway, Pat Dolan, and then there's Anna Coates, who's another UNESCO chair in Warsaw, and we've been working with them the three of us together have been working on a lot of stuff around, how we better engage youth in building good societies. How do we bridge some of the divides that we're seeing, just like we're seeing in America and everything else. And I don't know, I might have said this to you last time, but people are increasingly saying that all the conditions worldwide right now, it's kind of like the run up to World War I, where we're getting a lot of hate speech,
Yeah.
tolerance, and a lot of far right extremism and all sorts of stuff. So we're working with young people to make sure that goes away or that doesn't happen.
Let me ask you about the far right, because we definitely have a problem with we always had a problem here with the extreme right, but Ireland has always been towards the left, but from what I'm hearing, there's a little bit of a right wing extremism going on in Ireland. Is that just talk, or is that a real thing?
No, and it's not just a little bit. No, it's actually quite a bit.
How did it happen? How did that evolve?
I think it was a bunch of things. But you remember, let me think, it was maybe a year ago, 2 years, maybe about a year ago in Dublin, there was a bunch of riots and burned down a bunch of the Lewis trains and everything else and all that stuff right in Center City. That was you had someone who was a mentally ill individual who stabbed some folks, which is awful, terrible. But the far right was just, they were completely tooled up and waiting for something to happen. And they were on the streets in minutes. And yeah, no, there's some really scary stuff there. I mean, historically, you're right. I mean, I think a lot of it was more left leaning or even left extreme, historically going back. But yeah, big issue right now. And I think you're seeing it north and south. You're seeing it across the board. And I think that kind of taps into a lot of the stuff that's going on in the world. I mean, if you look, France was just a hair away from going far right. UK somehow pulled out and have gone back.
Yeah.
We're pretty far right in lots of ways. And, and there's, other places, Greece, they're going right. So I mean, it's a big deal, but Ireland is certainly, and I'd say it's growing too. I'd say it
Mark, is that tied to, because a lot of the right wing extremism is against immigrants here, which is funny because we're all immigrants in America, unless you're Native American.
Right.
But I know that Ireland does have a lot of immigrants the last like 10, 15 years. And is a lot of this right wing extremism directed, the anger directed towards the immigrants coming into Ireland?
Some of it is. I mean, it's funny, like, like during the whole, Celtic Tiger times, like the late 90s, early 2000s, any pub, restaurant, hotel you walked into, they were probably, had a Polish accent or a Czech accent, or, people just flooded the country from Eastern Europe because they were doing jobs the Irish didn't want to do anymore because the Irish were doing well.
Right.
And there wasn't much tension there at all. And then like when the boom ended, most of the folks who had immigrated to Ireland kind of went off to the UK because they were doing all kinds of stuff for the Olympics at that time. But then like, recent years, there's been kind of people coming in as refugees. So there's lots of refugees from Africa, even though, the Ukraine refugees, everyone had a very warm, welcoming hand out to them as they came. But then within a couple months, 6 months, 8 months, a year, the conversation changed, and it was like, oh, they're here taking our jobs, they're mooching on the system, they're doing, like all the goodwill and everything kind of evaporated. So I think part of it's that, but I think much like here, I think it's always been there. I think it's just under the surface a lot of times, and I think conditions pop up where people feel empowered to go that way. But no, I think it's, from what I've seen there, I mean, it's part of it is immigrants and refugees. Part of it is kind of like here, like people think the government's gotten too big, or they're not spending their taxes well enough, or different things. I think also, like, there was this, I don't want to say split, but it used to be like indistinguishable, the Catholic Church and the Irish government, and
right.
And over the years, and actually very quickly, I mean, think about it. It was only 25 years ago you couldn't get divorced. It was legal to get divorced. It's crazy.
Wow.
Abortion referendum, same-sex marriage voted by the country as a populace. There's that gap there, that void where the church used to fill, that I think is an open ground for people to dive in and make stuff happen. So it's a, strange time. Yeah.
Well, I do want to get into some of the far right. I want to get into Project 2025 because there's nothing more far right than that. It's actually scary. I've been reading a lot about it, but before we get into that, I want to cover some other topics. Bill, you got anything before I go on to the next topic?
No, go ahead, Sean.
So so Mark, since when the troubles were going on, there was a lot of support from America for, let's face it, the IRA and not just that, but the victims over there, and there was a lot of money coming over from America. But then, when the troubles ended and the peace process started, and then 9/11 happened, then that kind of that support system that uh, Ireland had from America kind of really had no place to go after that. So my question is now, there's a lot of problems over in Ireland, right? The rural areas have problems with mental health and suicide. There's a housing crisis there. Is that network in America helping that any way, or is that just kind of lost now?
No, I think there's some folks doing it, but you're right though, like, going back 25, 30 years, um, during the Troubles, whether people were informed or ill-informed doesn't matter. There was, you know, boatloads of money and support going over, and political support and all sorts of things. Um, and that did dry up with the peace process. It really came to a halt. You're right, with 9/11. I mean, you know, once once people saw what bombings and stuff looked like up front, it went away. But if you go back to it, I mean, this goes back to even like the proclamation of the Republic. I mean, it was, support from Ireland's exiled children in America. Um, and that was the stuff that, was focused on by, I mean, you know, everybody from De Valera all the way up to recent times. Um, People got involved and were active because they still felt that connection to the homeland, Irish culture, Irish people. They still saw themselves as Irish, even
Right.
from their ages. So, I think the goal was, this was an avenue they saw to provide something at home. Now, that's gone. But I think if you go back to the original ideas, it was to make Ireland, the Irish people, better, to contribute to, do that sort of stuff. And there's some organizations that exist now. They're doing really good stuff, but there's no shortage of ways people can get involved. And you're right. I mean, mental health, massive problem across the country, but rural Ireland has the highest suicide rate. Ireland has the highest suicide rate in Europe, and rural Ireland has the
Wow.
highest. Okay, big
Wow.
mental health issue. Rural areas, I'm just over there. I was out in Mayo and Sligo and other places. Um, the outmigration of young people has accelerated. A lot of rural towns, communities that were doing pretty good 10 years ago, you can't find a young person there now. So that's a problem. We got to figure out ways to help with community development, rural development, job creation, so people can stay in their home place, that kind of stuff. Youth development, like anywhere else in the world, young people are under a lot of stress, probably more than they've ever been. I mean, you look at impacts of technology and all sorts of other stuff, mental well-being, other things, and just other stuff with young folks. Big need for that. You mentioned housing. Poverty is massive. Everyone still thinks of like the Celtic Tiger times when everyone was, the country won the lottery. No, it's
Right.
There's housing shortages, there's hunger. If you think back to one of the things, Irish America always will jump up and down about is the famine. Well, there's still an enormous amount of hunger and poverty. So there's just no, there's no shortage of things people can do. And whether it's donating money or whether it's, doing whatever, there's lots of people can do. It's probably easier now than it ever was. You can go on any of the foundation's websites and throw $20 in or $100 in, or whatever,
Mark, can I ask you a quick question about the mental health issues?
Yeah.
Do you see that as sort of like a cultural issue? Because I've noticed, and certainly, I mean, my exposure to different cultures is limited. I mean, I've lived different places, but I've noticed that there are definitely, when it comes to the willingness to seek mental health or the resistance to it, I've noticed there are definitely, groups of people who are a lot more open to seeking, help when it comes to that. And then there are groups of people who just say, I'm just going to deal with it, or that's not even something that, that we do. Is that, do you see that as part of the issue within Ireland?
Yeah, I think there's some of that. I think, you clearly see the pattern that we see here with higher rates among men. I mean, there's absolutely that kind of thing where, just toughen up,
Right.
Push through it, you'll be fine. And we see how that gets us here. So that's there's that gender piece, but still an enormous number of women as well. Among young people, we're seeing more of it, which is, I think, the uncertainty about the world. And, I can't imagine what it would be like to be 14 or 15 growing up right now where, you get all this stuff online, but then you're wondering if the planet's even going to be around when you're 50. And I just,
Right.
despondency and stuff like that. The other part that's weird in Ireland, and you see this in other parts of the world too, but it's like the geography piece of it. The suicide rates during the winter go through the roof. Think about if you're isolated, rural Western Ireland, or if you're on an island or something like this, it's dark at 3:30 and, cold, rainy, your
Sure.
biophysical system starts to get out of whack.
Right.
So, I mean, there's been a lot of efforts to, especially on the youth side. There's a great national youth organization called Froiga that it's the biggest youth development. It's kind of like a 4-H and the United Way had a baby. It's just like the big thing like that. And they're starting to even do stuff with kids that are on the islands or in remote areas with VR and stuff like that to keep them connected and active and stuff like that, especially during the winter months, but year round, but especially in the winter. Yeah. So
Interesting.
I think it's a lot of things like that,
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break and give some of our sponsors some love here, and we'll be right back.
That's Enough Out of You is sponsored by Carfecta, Scranton's premier destination for finding the vehicle of your dreams. With a commitment to service, value, and selection, Carfecta is your trusted partner in every step of your auto purchase journey. Our sales staff will work with you to select the perfect vehicle from our diverse inventory. Our friendly office staff will assist you in securing financing and offering warranties. At Carfecta, our dedicated team is here to make your car buying experience seamless and satisfying. Located in Scranton, Pennsylvania at 220 South 7th Avenue, or call us at 272-770-0080 and check us out on Facebook. With years of experience serving the area, our dealership is dedicated to offering high-quality pre-owned vehicles to our customers. From the moment you walk through our door, we're committed to providing you with a great car buying experience. With our skilled sales staff and financing options, we'll help you get the vehicle you want at the great price you deserve. Visit Carfecta today and let us exceed your expectations. Are you thinking about selling your house? Well, Bob Connors, a realtor at Christian Saunders Real Estate, says, I can't sell your house, but I sure as heck can market it and get it from sell to sold. Call Bob today for great marketing and to get a ton of eyeballs on your house. Are you in the market to buy a home? Not sure where to start? If it looks like something you shouldn't buy, Bob's going to tell you that. Think you can't buy a house or have no idea where to start? Been there, done that. Bob will get you going in the right direction. You can reach Bob at 570-614-3624 or 570-335-9000. And you can find Bob on Facebook at Bob Connors-Realtor. Whether you call Bob or not, please remember, stay awesome, all you awesome humans, and be kind to each other. Bob Connors, the realest real estater. And thanks to Bob Connors and Christian Saunders Real Estate for sponsoring
ahead,
That's
Sean,
Enough
go.
Out of You.
So, Mark, let's talk about Sinn Féin, once was the political wing of the IRA. Sinn Féin stands for Ourselves Alone. It was the battle cry to the Irish Rebellion. But the transformation at this party, and I believe it's the most popular party in Ireland right now. Correct me on that if I'm wrong. But the transformation from the leadership from people like Jerry Adams and Martin McGuinness to Donald and how now just the difference. It's never, and I'm sure United Ireland is still part of their agenda, but it's not like it was before. Now they're focused more on political issues like housing and taxes and just normal political issues. Correct? Could you talk to me a little bit about the transition of the party?
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen, and I think you're right. I think they are. I mean, Ireland's government is kind of based on a coalition type thing. So, if you get a bunch of other smaller parties together, they might not be the biggest party, but I think on their own they might be. And yeah, and massive transformation over the last 20 some years, 30 years. And I think part of that's just the time period and stuff like that. You think about just the actual physical time period. A lot of the people that are running for office now weren't even born in the Troubles. And whereas in the past, a lot of all the leaders basically were diehard IRA members or activists or whatever you want to call it. And I think
Right,
that
sure.
that shapes the ability for discourse and for politics and other things. I mean, it was I think as you look back during the early parts of the peace process, it was amazing to see Paisley and McGuinness actually able to be
Yeah,
cordial and friendly and like
yeah,
that to overcome that. But a lot of people couldn't overcome the wrongs done by all sides to each other. So I think now you've just got a different thing. I mean, it's like I might know your background, Sean, and your history and everything else, but technically or physically you haven't done me any wrong, so I can actually make a deal with you in politics as opposed to other things.
right.
But all that said, though, I think they still have, they're very, very popular, like you said. I still think there's an awful lot of ghosts of the past hanging around. If you talk to a lot of people, I think they're still, the Republic are still, maybe suspicious or, or cautious with Sinn Féin. Because I mean, it is, it's a long time, but it ain't that long. A lot of the people that are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, have very strong opinions on them and remember the Troubles all too well. Just wasn't that long ago. So I think it's interesting. Like, yeah, you're right. I mean, I remember people saying back in the day that the next generation of,
No. Is their main goal still a united Ireland?
I mean, I think that's what they always kind of stand for and that sort of thing. But, I think we even talked about this last time, and you just mentioned it as well. Yeah, I mean, that'll probably come eventually demographically or something, but in the meantime, there's a hell of a lot more issues to deal with. And just like we were going through the whole list of things here, whether it's in the South or North or island wide, there's economic issues, there's all these different things. Yeah, and I think, a political party that just has one platform that is something that's probably pretty far off in the future. It's hard to, I think it's hard to get votes and everything else. I mean, it's, what was that? Jim Carville, remember I think he was Clinton's advisor. Said, this big saying was, it's about the economy, stupid.
Right.
Don't worry about the big,
Yeah.
the big grandiose ideas of other things. If I'm unemployed or if I can't have a house or whatever, I could care less about the United Country or whatever else. I'm trying to feed my family. I'm trying to,
Right.
so I think it's, it's a, they've certainly become more mainstream. They've certainly become more in line with things. I think it'll be interesting to see the next generation of them that'll come up, that are probably just being born now. I think in 20 years time, what it will look like is, who knows?
How do you think this affects the legacy of Jerry Adams and Martin McGuinness, or don't you think it affects it at all?
I don't think it affects it at all, really. I mean, I think you're looking sort of at apples and oranges. I mean, those are entirely different times and environments and conditions and peoples and ways of doing things and everything else, like in terms of, governance and peace process and stuff like that. Yeah, I think they're just different things. And I think, you've got people there now who probably don't have as much baggage and other stuff. So it's just different, I'd say.
Mark, the interesting thing happening, it seems like it's in America now, and I don't know if it's affected over there, but it seems like the Catholics in America want to be part of the religious right. Like a lot of Catholics want to be, and a lot of it's tied to abortion, and a lot of it's tied to, gay marriage and stuff. But it's always like, to me, it's like the religious right, I mean, hates Catholics. Let's face it. I'm talking the extreme religious right, but now it's like they want to be part of that culture with the religious right. At least I see that in America. Do you see that other parts of the world, or especially Ireland, or no?
I see it in other parts of the world, but like I was saying before, in Ireland, I don't see it as much because, I mean, um, you know, the Catholic Church did a pretty good job in Ireland when you look at it. I mean, you know, the way they were a government on their own, you know, the sex abuse scandals, the Magdalene laundries, you know, if you got in trouble when you were 14 or 15, they'd send you off to some remote, you know, orphanage type thing, and you were tortured. I mean, bad stuff. You know, they an awful lot there. So I think there's just that. And I think in Ireland it's different than other places because, you know, we certainly had a lot of control by the church here, but it was nothing compared to there. And you know, and speaking of that, I mentioned the Magdalene laundries and stuff like that. And we talked about Cillian Murphy last time. He's got a great movie coming out. And I'm not making a pitch for him, but it's a wonderful movie. Small Things Like These. That's a great book. You can read it in like an afternoon. But the movie is going to be brilliant. But it's a wonderful, wonderful story. And it's about all that. It's about, you know, the laundries and how women were treated and how, you know, yeah, so it's cool. So I don't think, to get back to your point, sorry, I'm rambling.
That's right.
I don't see as much of it over there, but here you know, this is my opinion. I'm just saying this talking with you guys, but I don't think it's even about religion here with the far right and with Catholic. It's about power. It's about, you know, I think as you look, you know, a lot of these groups, the things they've embraced, you know, are unbelievable, anti-religious at all levels, but it's gotten them, you know, tremendous power and everything else. And I think they've duped their constituents and other things. Like I could rant and rave on this for hours, but I don't think it's, you know, I don't think it's about anything doing what's right or what's good for people or making the world better. I think it's about, you know,
Oh, absolutely not.
pulling together their power and that sort of thing. And I think a lot of people are jumping on that bandwagon, and I think that's not a good thing. So
How about in the other European countries that you deal with that are predominantly Catholic, like Poland? And do you see any of that there, right wing?
there's a little bit in Poland. This last election they had, there was a lot of concern that they'd start going in that direction, and there was some religious aspects to it and other stuff. It didn't go that way, which was, you know, very, very heartening, which is good. You know, Italy, I don't know how much of it's linked with church or not, but you know, they went right. You know, France almost did, you know, and yeah, I haven't seen as much of like the church role in it or religious groups role. But it's probably also just because they're so, you know, like such a homogenous group. Like, you know, we've got, you know, a gazillion different types of Protestantism, a bunch of Catholic offshoots. You know, I mean, Italy, it's like Catholic Church in Rome, done. That's it. You know,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
other places, you know, I mean, it's there's no competition. It's sort of thing. So it's different. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But no, I haven't seen. I mean, it's there, it's certainly there, but I haven't seen as much.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I just see it here in the States. It just seems to me like you see a lot more Catholics going hardcore to the right and more conservative, probably ever than before, at least in my opinion, from what I've seen. You know, you see a lot of Catholics going away from the Democratic Party and going towards the Republican Party and really going right in their views. And like you said, Mark, you know, I think they're being duped. I think they're being tricked because the
Yeah.
religious right wing don't give a damn about them.
No, I don't think so. And I think, you know, and maybe they're not being duped. Maybe, you know, maybe they realize that, you know, somebody will listen to them. Somebody will say they're, you know, they're special for having their thoughts and beliefs and other things. And maybe, you know, I mean, some validation there. Yeah, it's scary. I find it really scary. And you know, I've had people like, it's funny, you know, we're so close to it because we're here. You know, I've had people say to me, different places in the world, like that America is like you know, that we're no different than any of these other countries that are purely ruled by a religious order. That, you know, and I say, oh, my first reaction is no. And I think, yeah, actually I got some, you know, very, very small number of people that are very unlike me deciding what kind of healthcare I can get and what kind of healthcare.
Yeah.
And
Right.
which of my friends can get married or not, and
Right.
all based on religion, their take on religion or stuff. That kind of does sound like a, you know, not too far of a jump from countries that are entirely ruled by a religious party, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right, Mark. Separation of church and state is kind of a myth at this point. It's just something we're trying to hang on to, but I don't know, I mean, you look even back, years ago, that was, I think we were a lot more, in line with, with religious beliefs and things like, the state laws and, things like that. We've actually progressed, I think, a lot in the last 50, 60 years, to try to move away from from that kind of stuff. But it's I think the pendulum is swinging back, towards that, and I think it's it's up to voters to decide, do we want to let that happen, or do we want to keep progressing? I think it's we're a lot closer to to going back to where religion was in charge, essentially, than we are, I think, to progressing past that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it's what's the old saying, Sean? I may be an atheist, but it never stopped me from being a good Catholic.
Yes.
No, yeah, and I think it's it's ingrained in us in certain ways, but I think we don't got to give up religion, my God, anything like that. But let's just let each other live. Let
Right.
each other have choices. And if you want to, if you're that strong in your belief about it, well, you got to be consistent. Not some rights are okay, some are not. You got to. It's. Yeah, I'm with you completely.
Well, that's a good lead up to our next topic that I want to talk about, which is Project 2025. But let's take another break and give our sponsors some more love, and we'll be right back.
DK's Corner has moved. Come see us in our brand new location at 201 Cherry Street in Jessup, Pennsylvania, right across from the Jessup Plaza. Enjoy a brand new menu with hot and cold sandwiches, soups, salads, pizza, delicious breakfast, including breakfast bowls and sandwiches, specialty coffees, and DK's famous Razzle Dazzle flavor shaken espressos, and still the best cheesesteaks around. Follow DK's Corner on Facebook and Instagram, or call them at 570-209-0278 to find out about their daily specials and catering. And DK's Corner now has beautiful outdoor seating for the summer. Don't feel like leaving the house? Call DK's Corner for delivery. And we thank DK's Corner for sponsoring That's Enough Out of You. DK's Corner, now in Jessup, Pennsylvania. That's Enough Out of You is also sponsored by Case Quattro Winery, featuring over 20 flavors of wine, from dry red, dry white, and fruit for your sampling pleasure. Case Quattro Winery offers entertainment, parties, and private events. Now serving a full menu with a little something for everyone, including appetizers, salads, dinners, pizza, and desserts. Case Quattro has some of the best live entertainment in the area, with comedy and karaoke nights and live bands. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram for all of our upcoming events. And if you mention the code OUTA, that's OUTTA, you get 15% off of your order. Located on Main Street in Peckville, Pennsylvania, call 570-382-3855 for more information. And we thank Case Quattro Winery for their support.
All right. So, I don't know how much you guys have been reading about this 900-page Project 2025. It's a lot of filler. Reminds me of the Warren Commission. But when I'm looking at it, some of the stuff is really scary. And we're going to be doing episodes down the road, and we're going to go through, we're going to say the page numbers where people could find this for themselves. And we're going to go through some of the things because, it's not just like Social Security and Medicare and the tax on that. There's a lot more to it. And one of the things is the Christian religion is going to be really forced in the schools. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And it's like, America's supposed to be about freedom of religion, separation of church and state, but Project 2025 is definitely not. I mean, it's all about putting the Christian religion in the schools, public and private. So what do you guys feel about that?
I think I think when you come back to those, there's got to be fairness in what we do, and especially with children. Um, you know, like why should I be, if I'm Jewish or Muslim or or an atheist like I am, why should I be forced to have someone else's religion pushed on me?
Right.
I think it's now you have options. I mean, certainly you can self-select and go to a Catholic school, go to a Protestant school, go to a secular school. Cool, great, if you want to do that. But in terms of public and things like that, why should, I think that's just so inherently unfair. And I think about too, like for young people that are just developing, children, it sends that inherent message that you're not worthy, your beliefs are wrong.
Right.
It's a horrible thing to do. I don't think that's at all what we should be doing. It doesn't do anything to talk about inclusiveness or about how we're one country together. It's immediately kind of creates second-class citizens unless you convert. Come on.
Yeah.
No.
But even Catholic schools, I mean, I went to a Catholic university, Marywood, and I took courses on different religions. They were teaching different religions to learn about, different ones and stuff. So, it wasn't forced upon us, so it's like, it's very dangerous. And Mark, as an educator, I don't know how much you read about, what they want to do with this Project 2025, but they want to totally get rid of the Department of Education and really revamp the education system in America. I mean, it's a right-wing Nazi ideology, to be honest with you, and it's going to be forced in schools. And the education system is totally going to be revamped with this Project 2025. It's a total rehaul.
Yeah, I mean, it's and look, I'll be the first to say it. I mean, our education system throughout the country has a lot of things lacking, a lot of things that aren't working with it. Just in terms of how we find, I mean, there's a long list of things we need to fix, but that's different than doing away with departments of education and stuff like that. Through some of the work I've done and other people, and it's one of the clearest indicators of your well-being in the future is how much education you have. For every year of education, more of education you get, the odds of you ending up in poverty and everything else just go down and down and down. And if we're not structuring our education system and adapting it to provide our kids with the skill sets they need, not just narrow skill sets to go be doctor, lawyer, carpenter, whatever. But again, those personal skills, the social emotional stuff, so we can actually talk to each other and engage with each other, be active citizens and realize we can, agree to differ on things. And then there's new emerging things. I mean, look at the curriculum now in schools is a lot different than it was for us when we were there. And that's just because the world's changed so dramatically. There's the internet. My God, there's all these different things, there's all kinds of new technology. If we don't make that happen, we're already ranked pretty low in terms of education globally. We're going to be at the bottom of the list if we don't just keep adapting, and with it comes the whole narrative that education is a burden, not a gift, and all this stuff. I mean, I know I'm preachy here, but we got to be, of all the things we got to be really careful we don't mess up our education system.
Great.
Well, in my opinion, Mark, it's a mess already. I mean, and I'm my family is all educators, and I from what I hear from them and what's going on in schools right now, I mean, with all of the programs the funding being basically not being there for things like the arts and history, things that we took for granted when we were kids. And those things just aren't, they're not available to kids anymore because there's just no money for it. And I think that's part of the erosion of that social aspect, right? I mean, having those things like arts, like music and, performing and things like that. I mean, that's all part of getting kids together and communication and working together and things like that. And that's not happening. And then, things like history are not being taught, or if they are, it's a very, bland version of history. It's a very bleached version of history.
Sure.
it's not, they're not talking about, anything relevant. They're not talking about anything that would help these kids. And the other thing is, when you talk about Project 25, Sean, it's already happening. We're seeing it in states like Oklahoma and Louisiana, where now they're incorporating the 10 Commandments into public schools. That's what's going to happen. We're not going to see something happen overnight. It's going to be a gradual thing where, all of these like states that surround us in Pennsylvania are going to start doing it. And, when is Pennsylvania going to get on? But like, those are the types of things that change. That's how things change like that. And it's scary because, I don't want my kids to have to learn that type of a thing. They learn that when they go to church, and that's, that's where it belongs. When they go to school, they should be learning math. They should be learning social studies. They should be learning, how to read. And we just, again, I think that those things are just eroding at this point. And it's scary. It's a scary future, really.
Yeah.
Well, when I take a look at Project 2025, it's really a dumbing down of the country is what it really is, because it's all about creating two classes, the rich and the poor, and that's it. Cut out the middle class completely, and the education system is part of that. Of course, the tax code is definitely part of that. But the way they want to do it with the education is to really just have private schools available to the wealthiest Americans and their children, and then the public education system, to just kind of just create a not really emphasize going on to college and just creating a labor force. That's what they want. I mean, there's a lot of things in this that people got to read, and I know Americans don't like to read, as Alan Dulles said, but some of us do, and some of us got to step up and start reading, because this thing is scary. This thing is like Germany in the 40s, and people better start reading it and become aware of it.
Yeah, it's a scary.
And that's just not hyperbole.
No, it's a very scary, and I think as we're talking education and stuff like this, I mean, just even think about even just subtle changes to some of the things we've been talking about. Not only is that kind of split rich and poor, but sets back, advances for poor rural whites, African Americans, minorities, like massive strides that have been made over the last 20, 30 years, kind of knocks that up from underneath you. So it's it's a poverty piece. It's focus, I think, disenfranchising folks. It's, it's scary.
All right. Well, you know what? Let's take our last break, get our sponsors in here, and then come back.
And we would like to thank our sponsor, Gracious Day Grains. Sean, you like to eat healthy, don't you?
Always, buddy. I try to eat healthy as much as I can.
Yeah, and there is nothing healthier than what they call like farm to table, right? So when you can get something right from the ground and make it and then put it right on your table. And Gracious Day Grains, they have a tremendous selection, and it's totally organic. Everything is, they don't use any sort of herbicides or pesticides or anything like that. They have a bunch of different products on their website, Gracious Day Grains. So if you go to graciousdaymilling.com, you'll find a bunch of great stuff there, Sean.
Yeah, you will, Billy. And it's owned by Tom Maxey, who's a great guy from Virginia. He's a truth seeker, just like me and you, buddy. And Tom's growing philosophy follows the wisdom of farmers of centuries past. And a quote from Tom is, "If we practice the right rotations, we exclude the bugs and weeds without needing herbicides or pesticides." So, I mean, this is great, Billy. I mean, what he's doing is fantastic.
There's cornbread mix, there's cornmeal, popcorn he sells, buckwheat Sean, have you had buckwheat pancakes?
No, buddy.
Oh my, they're delicious. I love buckwheat pancakes. And Gracious Day Grains sells buckwheat pancakes. Just go to their website and you'll be able to find all of this stuff there. You can order it right off the website. You can find out all about how they farm and their whole philosophy. Tom's philosophy is great stuff.
It really is, Billy. And one of the things he does is he grinds small batches at very low temperatures, which retains the flavor and the freshness.
Of course. And it, I mean, you can't get any fresher than that. I mean, it's literally right from the ground. So again, go to graciousdaymilling.com and just, take a look on there. You can order whatever you want and they'll send it right to your door. I mean, again, it doesn't get any fresher than that, right from Tom's farm to your door to your table. So
absolutely. And eat healthy and you'll feel better.
Absolutely. I wish I could do that. I wish I could eat healthier, Sean.
We'll start with Tom's stuff, buddy.
I'm going to order some of those buckwheat pancakes. I love
There you go. I'm going to try them too, Billy.
Yeah, they're really good. All right. Gracious Day. We thank Gracious Day Grains for their sponsorship.
Thank you.
All right. So welcome back. So we got a couple more topics, Mark, we want to discuss with you. Last thing, of course, well, not the last thing, but over the weekend we had the event there with the attempted assassination of Trump. And certainly, despite what some people in the media say, this it's no stranger to America's no stranger to political violence. I mean, it's been going on since the 60s and even before that. But just the level of discord in America right now and the extremism on both sides and the way the country is so divided and there's this violence, this nonstop violence. And, the guns are out of control. The school shootings are out of control. But now it's tied to political violence and both extremism on both sides is really, really a major issue right now. And what do you think, Mark, as an educator, what can be done to kind of reach, I don't know if the extremists could be reached, but the people in the middle got to have more of a voice and this violence has to stop.
Yeah. I mean, like the old Yates poem, the center has to hold. And I think, I think, there's a lot of things. I think we gotta find ways to start talking to each other again. I mean, the examples you gave are completely spot on, but I'm just always shocked by the number of college students and others that can't even talk to their families. I mean, that their family is split right down the middle politically.
Right.
And they can't go home for Christmas or holidays anymore just because they know they're just going to be there fighting about politics. It's absolutely tragic. And I think I think we have to hold the political folks accountable. They stir up this mess on both sides. They stir up this mess and have us fighting against each other. And as you're talking about behind the scenes stuff, Sean, for all of them, that's their advantage. Get me and you fighting with each other, and they can do whatever the hell they want. Because we're not. Our eye isn't on the ball. We're too busy fighting with each other, and they can just.
Mark, this is why I said from the beginning, I said I think Donald Trump is an intel operation because he's got everybody at each other's throats and nobody's looking at what the intelligence community is doing. And
Right.
they've been covertly doing everything Project 2025 has done, trying to do. Now that's just a project that they're just going to do it overtly. But Alan Dulles and people like that's been doing that forever in the organization that he created. But yeah, I mean, having everybody's throat and just fighting and you talk about these issues, Mark, like you talk about families fighting about politics, but half of this stuff isn't even political. I mean, whether Kid Rock is, drinking Bud Light or something, that's the issue. This is what people are fighting about. This stupid nonsense. Taylor Swift is an enemy now because she supports Biden, and it's like that's not political. Like this nonsense. These arguments and these. Robert De Niro can't act anymore. I mean, it's unbelievable. Like the same people that love Robert De Niro, now all of a sudden he's a terrible actor. He was terrible in Goodfellas. Like, come on, stop being hypocrites.
Yeah, no, and we've on both sides. I'm not trying to be wishy-washy. We pushed ourselves to such an extreme that it's an all or nothing thing, and it's you're either with me or you're against me, and that's a scary place to be. That's a really scary place to be, and and I think we've also been convinced that this is like a zero-sum game, that for somebody else to move along in their life and have a better life takes something away from me. It doesn't. It doesn't at all.
It doesn't.
Right.
Been
Right.
convinced of that by the narratives and stuff like this. Yeah, I think it's very scary. I think we got to, find ways to deal with each other. I don't think we talk and interact as much as we used to. We do it through text. that's not good. Or email. You know, we don't sit down and have a conversation with someone over a coffee or a beer or something else. We don't have good conversations in parking lots after baseball games or football games. You know, we don't interact like we used to. And I think that did an awful lot because, you know, think about it, you know, a little conversation with somebody can put out a fire really quick, or you can just agree to disagree and then start talking about something else. We've got to get past it. And I think, you know, how we deal with that, I think that goes to a lot of the things you talked about. I think the way we structure things in school, the way we open dialogue and communication, I think the way we act as citizens ourselves, how engaged or active we are, and just being, I'm not talking politics or anything else. I mean, you know, do you help clean up a park on a Saturday? Do you volunteer a couple times a year to do something good for the place? We don't do that stuff as much. And I think makes it very easy for us to become incredibly divided.
Yeah. I think just being civil to people is I mean, how, you know, it's not that much to ask. And accepting of people who are different. There's such a fear right now of people who are different. You know, if you're a trans person or gay or, you know, whatever, I mean, there's so much fear right now of people that, you know, are a little bit out of the norm, that it's really stocking this hatred and all of the, you know, this political craziness that's going on. I think people are, you know, in fear that someone who decides that they, you know, that they're trans is somehow going to affect their life, and it's not. That part I really don't understand. I don't get the whole idea that, you know, there can only be two genders because, you know, that's all I've known, or, you know what I mean? Like, I just, that kind of stuff drives me crazy with people that, you know, if you met somebody and actually had a conversation with them, if you met a trans person, had a conversation with them and found out, you know, what their story is, and, you know, when they started having, you know, these feelings and the struggles that they probably went through mentally, internally with their families and everything, you don't know that. You don't know what's going on with these people. And, you know, they're so quick to judge. And, again, Mark, it drives me crazy because, you know, they claim to be Christian. And, you know, a true Christian doesn't judge, right? True Christian says, you know, judge not lest thee be judged. And you know, and that's all these right-wing extreme people seem to be doing, is judging everybody else who isn't them, who's not Christian, who's not white, who, you know, and it's a huge problem that we're facing right now.
Yeah. Well, the ironic thing is, if Jesus Christ came down right now, what do you think the MAGA people would do to him?
They deport him. Honestly, because first of all, he's not white. And, you know, and he's what they would call a libtard.
And he's Jewish and he's from the Middle East. What do you think? Yeah,
exactly. Yep.
No, I mean, you're right. I mean, I think, like, you know, as you're saying there, Bill, it's like, I kind of think of all this stuff. I mean, who am I to judge? You know, my God, like, I've got enough skeleton in my closet and enough bad deeds behind me. I'm glad people don't judge me more. Who am I to judge? And two, you know, I mean, one of the things that's been great for me is just, you know, I've been in a big university setting for a long time. I go all over the world for work and other things. I've met people of every shape, size, dimension, you know,
sure,
everything. And
right.
Most amazing thing I see, you know, and I've a lot of the work, like especially the community development stuff, you know, I've been invited into people's kitchens all over the world of all kinds of people, and people that were incredibly different from me, you know. And first of all, I think there's a wonderful human connection that they had the interest in having me into their kitchen. But, you know, the key thing I've seen, no matter how different, you know, whether it's, you know, trans people, gay couples, you know, religious conservatives, liberal, you know, within 5 minutes of that whole, you know, here's my background, here's my belief, everything starts coming back to the same thing. My kids are spending all my money, you know, my spouse got me crazy. bill's too much. I gotta get a new car. It is the same story every
We all
day.
have the same problems. Absolutely.
Once you get past the thing, it's just, and like, and two, the idea that like any of those things, just by me being exposed to them, would fundamentally change me. Like, I mean, they do fundamentally change it because you open your eyes more. But the fact
Sure.
that like, when we're on a trans person, I'm going to change my sexuality. Explain that to me. Why is that going to, or if I'm around an incredibly religious conservative, I'm going to become that? No, we're just going to interact as human beings.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it makes no sense to me that, that I love and hate the idea that things rub off. That like it's absolutely ridiculous. It's just, come on, just
Yeah.
It's something you said earlier, Mark, about both sides. You got to talk about the radical left too, because there's a lot of issues on that side too. And we talk about this on the show. We had a friend, author Rick Otto, who's been on the show many times, and he talked about the Civil War in the '60s, where the fascist right wing, the intelligence community really, was a civil war against the left wing of the Democratic Party, the Kennedy wing, whatever you want to call it, and they pushed the party to a place where they could deal with, and that really was the change, and that out of that really became the birth of the neocons and the radical left. It came out of that operations like COINTELPRO, which was designed against the civil rights movement, Operation Chaos, which was against the left wing in this country, and it really created the radical left. So there's definitely problems on the radical left, but it does come from it was a creation of the right wing.
well, I think in every society, I mean, it's like a bell curve. You got your tails on each side, and the most extreme kind of hang out there. I think key thing is, all of us are the vast majority of us are in the middle, and we can make some movement. But yeah, it's there's no shortage of blame to go around on which tail or where on the graph you are.
Right.
Yeah, and I was in Portland, Oregon last year, and they've been known historically as kind of a liberal bastion of other things.
Mhm.
And everyone I've ever talked to said, "Yeah, I gotta go to Portland. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing." And I got there, and they had all the riots. Remember a couple of years ago, during the end of the Trump administration, that summer, they basically legalized all drugs, like non-enforcement. You can't go buy them, but so that led to people like rushing there, so you could just do that. They did a bunch of things around homelessness, all these things with good intentions. But if you go there now, the place is pretty rough. There's homeless camps everywhere. I literally saw, like, middle of the day in downtown, people fixing in doorways. Good intentions, but far left ideas that really weren't thought out enough. And it's going to take decades for them to come back. I mean, groups like Nike and others are pulling out of there because there's so much theft and everything else and crime and other stuff. I'm not picking on them. I'm just saying, like, that's, these very, whether it's right or left, doesn't matter. I mean, I think these very simple solutions to incredibly complicated problems end up with a world of hurt. So,
All right, I have one more topic, Mark. Bill, you have anything before I get into our last topic?
No, I just, I think, Mark, that's something that, we've seen that, we've seen in Oregon, we've seen it in California, we've seen it in a lot of these, so-called liberal states where, and that's that's some of the fuel to the fire, when we talk about the extreme right wing, is they say, well, if we move towards a more liberal government, we're going to have more crime, we're going to have more homelessness, we're going to have, and I don't see them as related. I don't know how you connect the two. I think it's, what we don't do enough of is, is helping people. We don't help when, and homelessness, by the way, is not exclusive to liberal states, to democratic states. There's homelessness in every state. I mean, there's no, that's not exclusive. You even, I mean, even in this area, you drive around, you see things. There are homeless camps in Northeast Pennsylvania all over the place. It's a national issue right now. It's something that we need to kind of come together, to help people. And the more that, the right wing kind of fuels that, that hatred, and that we're just going to get further and further away from being in a place where we can help people, where we feel like we should help people. And it seems to be like a self-perpetuating, issue. I don't, what are your thoughts on that, Mark?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I think what you started off with there is spot on. Like that, don't confuse ideas with bad decisions.
Right.
The whole thing I described in Portland, and you're right, similar in San Francisco and other places. There were well-intentioned ideas. There were to, like with things like drug possession and stuff like that. If you can avoid having that on your record, you can actually get out of like the cycle of being in drugs. It's good intentions. Bad rollout of a program, yeah, and you see that too. You're right. That doesn't see any distinguishing thing between a red state or a blue state or a purple state or wherever.
Right.
And yeah, you look at Portland or other places, see massive amounts of homeless. What we know from the statistics are there's equal number in rural areas. You just don't see it. It's not as visible.
Right.
Everyone's
Right.
You're living at your in-laws, you're doing everything else. It's the same here. Everyone thinks that, university town, it's all rich kids and nobody's, homeless or anything else. At any given time, we got about 10 to 15% of our students are homeless.
Mm.
They're not laying on a street corner, they're couch surfing.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't get this idea that it's one or the other, in terms of political ideology and everything else. Yeah, we got to get back to the basic thing of just, I really don't care what your set of criteria is. We just got to take care of each other. You got to look out for each other. That's it. End of story. You got
Exactly.
It's a patriotic duty. It's an act of citizenship. Call it whatever you want. Responsible
Yeah.
citizen. You got to take care of each other. That's it.
Yeah.
So last topic I want to talk about, Mark, this is going to be an interesting conversation. It's kind of how I want to talk about how the Irish are portrayed in Hollywood. And really what I'm talking about is if you go back, because we do a lot of organized crime on our podcast, and we talk about the Irish gangsters and the Jewish gangsters, and that was a different time period. You talk about coming from oppression and Jewish gangsters, fleeing, Jewish immigrants fleeing Eastern Europe from the Nazis, and Irish immigrants fleeing from potato famine and from the oppression of the British. And a lot of them came to America and they faced the same discrimination that they faced in their homeland. And, we know about No Irish Need Apply and everything. And some of them turned to crime. It was a different period. And I think if you look at it, because of that oppression, a lot of these gangsters, these immigrants turned into gangsters, and they really did. The Irish and the Jewish gangsters really were more vicious even than the Italians. And I think it was born out of that oppression, that if you get a guy who could really tap into that anger that comes from oppression, you could really get a gangster who could cause a lot of damage. And you see that with the Irish and the Jewish gangsters. And really now, if you see in Hollywood, that period is really gone, and the thing is, Hollywood wants to keep that alive. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but it not so much with the Jewish gangsters, but definitely with the Irish gangsters. If you watch TV shows, you see so much of these cop shows where they bring in, the Irish mob, which really doesn't exist today very much in America. And they keep it alive, and they shows like Sons of Anarchy. And I even seen, Mark, where different shows, FBI International was one of them, where they bring in the IRA, like they're still very active and this and that. And they just portray the way the Irish are portrayed is the way they were violent gangsters back when they were immigrating in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, even into the 60s. But they're portraying that in Hollywood as, modern day, the way it is in the modern day. Do you guys see that in anything in Hollywood? Have you noticed that?
Well, I think you're right. Historically there was that kind of thing, and there was, the paddy wagons and all the kind of, slurs towards
Sure.
Jewish gangsters and everybody else, immigrants. Yeah, I think, I think you still see a good amount of that sort of thing. You're right, like as a character plot. I mean, I remember binge watching The Sons of Anarchy, and I thought kind of the same thing. Like this is a bit much.
That was a bit much. I mean, they made the Irish so violent in that, that was back to an era. And listen, the Irish gangsters were as violent as could be. I mean, they were extreme. The Westies were probably the worst. That's a different period. Different period. When you're doing a show and you're modernizing that, you're bringing it to the modern era and making it like it's today. That's just not today. I mean, that's not the way, Irish America is today. I mean, they've immigrated, they've assimilated into America where, it's just not there anymore.
Yeah, and I think, I think if you look at like some of like the Irish cinema, just normal people, a normal story set with Irish people or Ireland. The ones that are produced here, I mean, if you don't have an over-the-top accent and everything else, and if it's not just, kind of cheesy, happy-go-lucky leprechaun type thing, it's just, it's just ridiculous. It's just, absolutely ridiculous. But, I mean, it's an important thing too. I mean, I'll send it to you one of these days if you want it. But I show it in one of my classes. But like, there's all these like cartoons from back in the 1800s and stuff. And there's a great one that said like for Northern politicians, it was the two necessary evils you had to deal with. And it was these two chimpanzee looking guys on a scale. And one was black, one was Irish. And you had to deal with the blacks and the Irish if you were going to deal with politics. But both of them were portrayed as, ape-like and, subhuman and all this sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I mean, that kind of stuff it's gone on a long time. And I think, people hang on to stereotypes and everything else. And, I just learned this one the other day, Sean. You'll like this one. Per capita, who drinks the most in the world? Alcohol.
Everybody say the Irish.
Yeah, they'd say the Irish, yeah. Nope. It's the French.
French, okay.
They'd have like a glass of wine with lunch, a glass of wine with dinner. Total over a span of a year, they'd have more than the Irish. So
I would have said Italians.
Yeah, I mean, you think, yeah, absolutely the same thing. But everyone goes to the Irish. But yeah, hey, it's portrayal of people takes a long time to go away. People latch onto those stereotypes. They latch on to images and things that aren't reality at all. And yeah. And hey, before we I know you want to wrap up. Before we do, could I just tell you a couple other things quick?
Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. This goes back to our start of stuff. I think that idea you were talking about of Americans doing good things for their extended Irish family is a great thing. So there's a couple of ways you can do it, and I just made some notes. You can even just do a simple, get on Google and look at donate Irish poverty or something like that. But if you're interested in mental health, there's mentalhealthireland.ie, which is one of the leading mental health organizations. You can give them donations, you can give them help, advice, whatever. I mentioned the youth one, Foreiga. Foreiga is spelled FOROIGE.ie. Biggest youth organization. They do all sorts of stuff. They could use donations. One we didn't talk about too was healthcare. And this certainly go in line with your brother, Sean. The Irish Cancer Society. The rates in Ireland are incredibly high. Make a donation there. If you're worried about sending money over there, two groups in America that are vetted and are really good, real stand up. There's the Ireland Funds of America. You can donate money there, or the Irish American Partnership out of Boston. I've done work with both of these groups. They're stand up. They fund everything from child needs up to healthcare needs, all sorts of things. And the last thing, you can always go and volunteer. Take your vacation to Ireland and make it a different thing. Go over and explore the place, but volunteer for a week. Meet some cool people. So there's stuff to do.
Yeah.
And, everywhere needs our help, but if that's a place that's connected to you because of family and heritage, go do something.
Excellent.
Interesting. Yeah.
Well, this was really outstanding, Mark. Fantastic. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we wrap it up? Because I know we've been going over an hour here.
No, that's, with that list of topics, we could talk all day.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for having
Billy,
me.
anything you want to add, Billy?
No, I'm just grateful you were able to reschedule and come back on with us, Mark.
Oh, thanks a million for having me and being flexible.
Yeah.
And keep up the good work, buddy, and we'll have to have you back.
All right.
You're doing great stuff, and keep it going.
All right, you guys too.
All right.
All right. Thank you. That's Enough Out of You podcast is executive produced and written by Bill Rader and Sean Kane and edited by Bill Rader. The That's Enough Out of You podcast and logo are exclusive property of Bags of Chicken, LLC. Any rebroadcast, retransmission, or accounts of this podcast without the express written consent of Bags of Chicken, LLC is prohibited. So don't even try it.